Hey guys, Dave from Nerdarchy for Nerds by Nerds, and today I'm hanging out with Black Dragon Games.
Black
How are you?
Dragon Gaming.
Gaming? Sorry.
It's all good.
So how are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great. Like I said just a second ago, I get to get off work to do this, so that's sweet. I'm super beyond stoked to get to hang out with like one of the bigger YouTube channels out there. This is kind of just like out of the blue. A friend of mine, Adam Spain, in a Planet Crossroads, he just kind of shoots me a message. Hey, Tommy, go do this. And it was really easy. And here we are. There was no muss, no fuss. And now we're hanging out with the big guys.
We're just dudes that like to get nerdy and play make believe and roll funny shaped dice.
And fair enough. Yeah.
So I mean, and you know, and to be fair, in all honesty, where you are right now is where we were like 3 years ago, 4 years ago, doing the same thing, just trying to figure stuff out and you know, we're working through the YouTubes, and for the first 6 months, like nobody was watching what we were doing. So it's just the way it goes. So what kind of videos are you guys throwing up? What is it you like to do?
Well, at the moment, we are primarily Pathfinder based. As we expand, we intend to go to like 5e. I used to play a lot of Star Wars Saga Edition. I imagine we'll cover that. I imagine we'll play some Star Wars games eventually as well, in addition to like Magic the Gathering and maybe some like other game streams, like just kind of jump on OBS and whatever's in my Steam library we go, that kind of thing. But right now, like I said, we are primarily 100% Pathfinder. On Mondays, we put out a video. I'm a big fan of like power to the players, and all the information should be public. I'm a big fan of like the archives of Nevis and all the like SRDs, where you can find like random races that aren't core races. So on Mondays, we talk about races that are, I guess if someone requests a core race, we'll cover them, but like strictly non-core races. Last week, we covered the lizard folk. Next Monday, I believe I had the Tengu requested, but we even covered like, if you know what the Munavari is in Pathfinder and how like grossly overpowered they are like claimed to be, we covered them. We've covered races from Blood of the Sea, like shark people and stuff like that. Wednesdays right now, we're covering the deities. At the request of Adam Spain from the Interplanar Crossroads, we've been covering the four horsemen of the apocalypse. Today, actually, at 4 p.m., the video for Sharon goes live, and then we'll like round that out. But it's just kind of like we jump through the gods, we talk about their backstories, their deific obediences, and how we can abuse them on our characters. Paladin codes, a lot of like real life equivalencies. Like somebody asked me, and this will be 2 weeks from now. Yeah, 2 weeks from now. They wanted me to cover Baba Yaga. She's not technically like she's not a deity in Pathfinder, but she's got mythic ranks, and she could basically go like just pooh, dead Imperial Lord just out of nowhere, because that's how powerful she is. And obviously she's from like she was in Arthur. There's an episode of Arthur where her chicken house shows up. So a lot of stuff like that. Fridays, we do a little like 5-minute tour of the Inner Sea region. We talk about the lore that's going on Galarion. That is halfway done-ish. I think that's the only video series I have going right now that has like a definitive end point. We did the Sodden Lands are coming up this Friday. Yeah. And then Thuvia was the week before. We've kind of hit all the like, oh, I got a new subscriber. That was fast. Just like, Cheliax has been done, Osirion's been done, all the big places, we talk about those. We have a little mini series that we bounce back and forth with the Interplanar Crossroads called Around the Hearth. It started out where we just kind of talked about like, we did an alignment chat because those are just totally asking for it, I guess. And like our worst experiences in gaming. But right now we're just bouncing through the bestiaries from like, we started the CRs out real big, and since those turned into like 4-hour discussions, we're taking them at 2 CRs at a time. We did 7 and 8 on his channel last Monday. And then my videos go live Saturdays at 8 a.m. On my channel, we talk about how to build encounters at that CR. Again, I kind of feel CR is kind of arbitrary when you get like, I guess my player's min-max too much is what I'm trying to nicely say here. Though, like, we'll do CR 7 and 8. We'll build some encounters. At any given time, we have like 5 or 6 people come over from my channel from the Interplanar Crossroads. And then like next week, we'll go talk about 9 and 10, and then till we get done. Then after that, I don't know where we're going, but I imagine we'll keep it up. On Sundays, it started out as a live stream, but this channel, like, we're still pretty young and we're kind of like on fake it till you make it mode, I guess. We're doing a Pathfinder stream, which is now just we record it on Thursdays and upload it. And it's actually, for all you old people like me and Dave here, it's based off an N64 game called Ogre Battle 64, Person of Lordly Caliber. I've converted it as much as one can convert something that's super linear into a tabletop RPG. I converted it into Pathfinder, and we're like, oh, I even screwed this up on the stream. I never remember what episode we're on. I think session 17 is this Sunday, and it's a whole ton of fun. We got some Dawn Forged cast patrons come over to do that. We've got, there's another subscriber. Woohoo! We've got guys from IOPC. My wife plays, my essentially brother plays. He's playing a custom race, which is a whole lot of fun. And also it's like we have people who are lawful evil and people who are like worshiping Theron Ray or like up here on the alignment chart, and they have to like function in the same party, and it's a mess sometimes. But when you put the necromancer with the people who don't like the necromancers, they have to like work around it, and it makes for an interesting story because it's not like oh, you're fighting demons, let's play 6 paladins, haha, that kind of thing. We used to put out character optimization videos, and like it's just been like, now that I like am working a little more and I have a family and I have to eat and sleep at some points, I really do. We called the series Min-Maxing for Fun and Profit, and we'd cover like AC optimization, like how to get your armor class really high without plate mail, how to play a cleric without being forced into like the healer niche, because unless you want to do that, who really like, oh, be the healer, you know? I'm sure it's fun, like if that's what you want to do, but I hate seeing clerics just like, you learn the cure spells and stay in the back. It's boring. We did that kind of thing.
Yeah. So and how many videos a week are you guys putting up? You just rattled off a bunch. So
at the moment, 5-ish. It's Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday for sure, and then every other Saturday. But I might put out another min-maxing video this week. It just depends on if I get the time to throw it together. That kind of thing.
Oh, sweet. So you guys are putting up a lot of content. It's a lot of work.
I can. Yeah, it really is. It totally is. But it's a lot of fun.
Is your wife a gamer as well?
She is. She comes from a family where they played a bunch of like weird, I shouldn't say weird, they're not weird, but like because we play the weird board games. I played Arkham Horror, but just like a lot of like random board games. And I got her really into Fallout is what happened first. She plays Fallout more than I do now, and she plays Magic. She gets more salty at Magic than I do. But I got her into, we started at 3.5, and then she just kind of like funneled into Pathfinder. She has a lot of fun with it. I think the best character, well, like favorite character she's ever played was and somebody's going to cry foul when I say this, but we play a lot of Gestalt characters, and I let her play a Drow Noble. At the time, I didn't realize like what the RP meant in the back of the advanced race guide, and how like, well, this is overpowered, that kind of thing. But she played that for like 2 years. She played a Gripply Magus. She had a lot of fun with. She was the one who played a shifter that I'm optimizing in a video that I'm going to try to have it out this week. We'll see what happens. But yeah, she's into it right alongside me. It's like, if my wife wasn't into this, I wouldn't be able to like invest all my time into making YouTube videos.
Well, it depends. I mean, my wife isn't into this stuff, but I've invested a lot, been able to invest. She's great and supportive that way. And it takes up a ton of time. And so it ends up being a lot of work, but it's fun and it's enjoyable. And I get to do this and hang out with people like you and talk about nerdy stuff. So do you GM most of the time, or are you a player?
I like to be both. I think I prefer the GM seat. I think I like being able to build the world and have like all the moving parts, you know what I mean? Be able to like move around and know like this action does XYZ, but also like if I'm not a player for long enough, I'll get the itch. And also like I'm really good at like I'll get a new Pathfinder book and I'll flip through and then, oh, that's really good. I need to build this. You GM for me, that kind of thing. I kind of like good.
Also, guys, if you have questions, just put a question in front of it. And especially if you have Pathfinder questions, now would be a good time to ask. They ask us Pathfinder questions all the time. Like, I don't know, I hardly ever played Pathfinder. We've only played a handful of sessions. I own the book behind me somewheres. But you know, when 5th edition came out, we kind of just moved in that direction and kind of kept going. So, but they'll ask, hey, how do you build this? And I'm like, I don't even know what you said. So, you know, especially the newer stuff. So Zareth Gaming is a question. So I'm running a tier 1 adventure where the players fortify a town that is secretly under the influence of a hag. So what are some fun things I can do to the town just before taking over by the hag? Oh, there's tons of stuff with that.
Oh yeah, for sure. I'm a big fan of, like, if you're low level, I like having suicide goblins come up out of nowhere. I did this once. There was no hags involved. It was more like a place called the Mwangi Expanse in Pathfinder. Was very like that themed, and have goblins get dropped off of rocks carrying bombs because they don't know anybody, and just like boom, blow up the party, that kind of thing. As far as like slipping things around, well, for one, as of Blood of the Coven, which came out, I'm gonna say like 2 months ago, but I think I'm wrong. The changelings, which are hag spawn in Pathfinder, they have like 7 or 8 new variants, like tieflings and Azamars do. So there's a whole like wealth of new information right there for hags and for hag spawn that you might be able to slip in. By that same notion, I don't know like what the hag does in your game. I don't know if you're slapping class levels on it, but there are a lot of like really weird witch hexes. Like you can make like animals freak out, or you can I never take the weird ones because I'm a blatant min-maxer. But there's a lot of witch hexes you can play around. The slumber hex out of nowhere is fun. I think there's like a poisoned apple, like Snow White kind of themed one. You can do that. At that point, if we're tier 1, if we're really low level, at that point, I don't want to say I pull my punches. I don't want to be that guy. But there's a lot of encounters that are kind of just like for fun's sakes and not necessarily super threatening. If if the hag has like a decent like pool of companion resources in bestiary, I think it was 2. The Pugwampy Gremlin, it's just a little like CR 1/3 thing that I imagine it would be hanging out with a hag. And what it does in 5e terms, what it does is everything that's not a gremlin or a gnoll or under a luck bonus within 20 feet of it has disadvantage on everything forever. So that's like, don't throw it in if the player's going to die. Unless that's the kind of game you're running, in which case, yeah, off with their heads. But
I would say like if you're using a hag at a first level, and it's a first level party, and the town is under siege, I would have the hag toy with the town for a while, like blatantly so. Like that's the plan, and maybe that's kind of like one of the flaws of the hag is that she would rather toy with her food before eating it for a while. And for some reason, I want to say you should curse all the chickens in town and have like this strange magical disease start spreading among the chickens that slowly turns them into cockatrices. So they have to like solve this riddle of, or they either have to get rid of all the chickens, find something to do with them, or cure them and keep them from becoming cockatrices. That was just something weird that popped in my head. But yeah, you could definitely have a lot of fun. You could have have her send weak monsters into the town that terrorize the town more so than blatantly trying to destroy the town or kill the players. Clearly, or maybe the hag has a way of siphoning off emotions like fear. So it's not really her objective to kill it. She just wants to terrorize the town so she can fuel whatever this device is that eats emotions, or she eats emotions.
Yeah, I can dig it.
So she might do that for a while, get fat on fear, and then she plans on destroying the town.
Mm-hmm.
So there's definitely some things you could do with that. So December 7 M2, how would you go about making the highest intimidation character possible?
Okay, that one's easy. I can answer that one super easy. The book is called Legacy of the First World. I think there's a barbarian archetype. It's called Underwater Rager. It feels weird, but at level 1, you add your Constitution to intimidate checks in addition to other things, and then the feat Intimidating Prowess lets you add your Strength in addition to your Charisma. So just Strength, Charisma, and Constitution all just dump in right there. I will say that there's got to be a little bit of role play along with that too, because it's kind of, and I'm very guilty of this, but it's kind of boring. I'm going to roll an intimidate check. Haha. 67. I win automatically. Like play around with it a little bit. Definitely.
My guy would have a stack of rip away shirts.
Yeah, just I can dig it. Joe, he plays a custom race in Pathfinder is a half troll. Essentially, he's real good at playing that kind of character. And I never learned my lesson when I put NPCs in the world that are supposed to like, hey, you can't kill this. I'm going to intimidate it. Now I'm going to attack it. Ha ha. He's just like I said, just strength, con, chaw. There's a feat called Hurtful that lets you, when you intimidate somebody as a swift action, you get a free attack against them. It combos with a feat called Cornugon Smash, which it lets you, when you power attack somebody and hit, you get a free intimidate check to demoralize, and then there's that free attack, and you do that kind of thing. I will also say that intimidation doesn't always have to be like, I'm going to beat my chest at you. I think it's just as fun to have the like somebody, there's a trait, I forget what it's called, but it lets you pick a social check and you can use your intelligence instead of your charisma and play the character who's like going to describe in very, very intricate detail what would happen if he cut you here and what veins are particularly important to this race, or if this bone breaks, exactly what it will feel like, that kind of thing.
Oh yeah, you can always be more subtle to it. It could always be things like, oh, your wife still lives over blah blah blah, gives the address, or things of that nature.
Yeah, for sure.
Kenyatta has a question: how do you counter power creep or ability bloat in an exhaustive expanded product like Pathfinder as a GM?
To be honest, you power creep harder, I would say.
You embrace
it. It's there. People like it. Some people don't. It's blatant that some people like either don't, or I've had players that they've dropped because they feel like they just can't keep up. And I understand. It makes me sad. It makes me feel like I, as the GM, did something wrong. But I get it. As far as the power creep goes and the bloat, you just kind of have to like stay on top of it. I find most of your players, frankly, are going to be really excited to tell you how they built what they built, because you're there to share with like your players and your GMs, your experiences, and we all grow together. If your player is being a jerk about it, then the person's a jerk, and that's a whole different conversation. Again, just like ask him how he's doing it. Ask him like, how'd you do that? And I'm sure he's more than happy to explain, and then just kind of like learn from there. Also, it kind of feels cheaty face to say it, but like as the GM, you have the power to say it gets this because I say so. Some players will balk hard at that, but again, you have that power. And if you feel like you need to use it to challenge them, definitely go for it. As well as challenge rating itself around, especially like level 5, 6, 7, it becomes arbitrary. So if your players are hitting really hard, don't be afraid to just like dump a really powerful monster on them. And if they take it on and they beat it, that's like, that's great. They did awesome. But if it challenges them, the GM can like pull that monster's punch at the end, or like it gets bored and teleports away, that kind of thing, rather than just like TPKing it out. There's a lot of options there. And it's just like, I think the most important thing is don't stymie anybody's fun. As long as it's not stymieing your fun, just let it in, acknowledge it, let it happen. And eventually you'll grow to like understand it.
I think that's a little bit of a misgiving too, is the fact that you saying it gets this ability because like I wouldn't even go that far. I'd be like, well, you don't know. You just don't know. That's the point of being the GM is things that the players don't, and sometimes you haven't figured them out yet. That's all. But you can implement things in the game that break the rule as the GM. I mean, that's kind of GM fiat. But as long as you're not being a douche about it, it's fine. And sometimes it's just like, it's not your job as a GM to explain everything to the players if they wouldn't actually know how that's happening. If the monster uses a piece of magic they've never seen before, it is simply that. It is magic that you haven't seen before. You can try and figure it out later and research it, but right now you just don't have access to that information.
For sure, yeah.
Spoonie, Noah Atweiler, he has one of the best lines for that, and he would just say, well, yeah, you're right. Isn't that interesting? Just leave it at that.
Yeah. If your player has taken his intelligence and he's dumped his intelligence, then he doesn't know. Ugg the Barbarian has no idea.
And that's for sure. And even a super smart character, sometimes that doesn't mean they know everything. They're just better at figuring things out.
Mm-hmm. So, and is that not what tells the story too? Like, oh, this is new. This is exciting. I have to figure it out.
Yes, absolutely. But it could take things in a new direction. DSDJKK question: what to make a village that has Groundhog's Day effect? How would you run it, or ideas? That's fairly easy.
Yeah, I would just kind of like, as we're just saying, you have the power to do that. So I would just kind of do it. Like if you want, like Groundhog Day as in the movie, everything resets, I guess, if that's what we're saying.
Yeah.
But just make it reset. Make it like, whoop, that happened. I would, on the one hand, don't hand out a bunch of stuff because then your players are going to, well, don't hand out a bunch of stuff that's going to adjust the math of the character sheet. Don't like, hey, here's your belt to physical perfection. Now it's gone tomorrow. Ha, change your whole sheet. Don't, that would suck. But hand out a bunch of gold or a bunch of like really crazy magic items. And then the next day just gone. By that same token, by a literal meaning, if you want to play like an awakened groundhog or some kind of outsider that can actually like determine the weather by what it happens to do, that's another fun route to go with it, because a lot of times at higher levels, depending on your casters, they become arbitrary, but weather effects are real. Weather effects will kill you. So if suddenly there's going to be 6 more months of winter in a world that's already like, say they don't have a whole lot of harvest from last year, it can drive the story. It will certainly drive the economy and thus the magic items, that kind of thing. And it's also like, we don't see that a whole lot. And it's, again, it's just another fun outlet that you can go with it.
I would create a bunch of scenarios that are happening around the village, and just knowing, because the players are going to explore different things and they're just going to repeat every day. You know, it's going to happen the same way. The only difference is if the players interact with it, then it's different that one time. But if they go back to the same scenario, it's unfolding the same way. They're going to have almost like precognitive abilities, because they're going to know, oh, step back. The wagon's going to go through that puddle right now. It's going to splash. Things like that. Now, as the GM, I wouldn't tell them every time. It would be up to them to kind of like remember or take notes and figure it out for their characters. But, I would have maybe a dozen scenarios or whatever going on at the town at the same time. So when they go to different places, they can then experience them over and over again, interact with them. After, you get to midnight, it resets. They wake up to the same thing, rooster crowing, dog barking, someone banging on their door, whatever the trigger is, that's just going to keep happening.
Mm-hmm.
So it's but it would definitely be a fun scenario. It was a fun movie. Why not?
Yeah, for sure. Also, you make an interesting point there. Like if something were to happen, if the trigger is at midnight, eventually your players, especially like the smarter ones, will figure that out. And like, I would say not necessarily an encounter. You don't have to turn it into a fight, but have like at X time, Y happens because of Z, whatever Z happens to be that a creature, be it an astrological event, blase. And like, have them be able to mess with it a little bit. Have it like, I find, I call it player chaos, and I've learned to embrace it. No plan survives contact with the party, right? So just kind of realize that players, like, they're really good at figuring out the story, and it's part of their story too. So if they find a way to twist it, if they find a way to like maybe push time forward or stop it at midnight or whatever it is it happens to be, let that happen. And maybe like I'm a big fan of rewarding the natural 20. I'm a big fan of like, if you crit a skill check, that is a critical, something sweet happens, let them figure it out and just kind of let the story develop from there. It'll be a blast.
Yeah, honestly, I might not even come up with a solution to that problem and be like, let me see what they come up with, and use the best idea that the party comes up with.
That is my favorite way to one shot, is just like know how much time I have, and then like in the last hour, the important thing happens. In the meantime, just let them figure it out and go with it, because they're going to feel more rewarded that way for sure.
Yeah, I think it was one of the guys from Tabletop Terrors that said, I don't create solutions, I just create problems. And he articulated, the way that I've gamed for a while, just because I find if you create like one solution to a problem, your players will come up with everything but that solution anyway. And then there's the other side of it, where sometimes they just come up with a cooler solution than the one you thought of.
Yeah, I love when my players do that. That happened. It's actually on my channel in my live stream. The fates aligned that my stream would go up on Christmas Eve. So I put my level 6 guys against Krampus, who's like a CR 25 or something. And I had it set up to where there was this cleric who was going to spam fear effects, and there are will-o-wisps floating around. And will-o-wisps in Pathfinder aren't like scripted to like, in the presence of a fear effect, they will attack you. But that's how I ran it. And my Intimidate guy made the cleric shaken. And so the will-o-wisp, they all just kind of went off. And I did not intend for that to happen. I did not intend for a bunch of level like 5 or 6 players to kill a level 18 cleric. but it happened, and it was a great story now. So hey, why not?
Are you gaming in person or online?
Yes. It started out as I think most of these things do. This guy at a LGS that I was going at playing Magic, he's looking for people to play Pathfinder. Starting out with like 10 people in the group, and then next week there's 3. And it kind of just like, we took a hiatus for a little while, but it's been like 3 years. Present day, real life, it's me, my wife, and who's essentially my kid brother. His name is Joe. It's weird to call him a kid brother because he's probably a little more mature than me, but neither here nor there. Also, we have a game going up on my YouTube channel. I decided like what I was going to do is if I'm going to GM and also have a YouTube channel, might as well just kind of do this. Right now, on the weekends, Joe will come up and we'll play the games we have here, and then we will over on YouTube play the game that I'm GMing. And then also on the Inn of Planar Crossroads, I'm playing Rise of the Rune Lords with them right now in a party that like as we speak, my phone is blowing up for the messenger chat for that, and just how like dysfunctional that party has become trying to figure it out. Not in a bad way, but like the paladin wants to do this and my orc hunter is not standing for it. And to not spoil Rise of the Rune Lords, I have a kitsune in the party, and the kitsune is like starting to get sympathetic with certain elements of the plot, and the Tengu is just he's taken all the loot in this house and he's run off with it. And it's a blast to watch. Adam's a really good GM. He's really good at taking an adventure path and making it his. So that's all my gaming right now, and I definitely if you've never seen Rise of the Rune Lords, if you've never seen a Pathfinder AP, Adams is one to watch because, again, he makes it his own, and the narrative becomes almost like his weapon that he uses against us, for lack of a better way to say it, because he's not just on book. This happens, roll initiative, you get this, okay, now this, that kind of thing. It's a total blast.
Do you prefer playing adventure paths and pre-written stuff, or you prefer homebrew?
It depends on the GM, really. A lot of the Pathfinders out there might be familiar with the module Masters of the Fallen Fortress. It's supposed to be just a dumb little tower run that's to get people into Pathfinder, from what I understand of it. And I've played it twice. The first time I had no idea. The first time I thought oh, okay, this guy made a tower. Here is a lizard. I will fight it and some troglodytes. And then my wife's first foray into the GM world for that same GM as a player was to run this. And I'm helping her learn the intrinsical nature of it. That's probably not the right way to say that, but whatever. And scrolling through the maps, and I start to recognize the maps, and we get to that dude's house, and just, hey, I'm on to you. As far as APs go, I think Paizo can tell a really good story, but I also think, and this is one of the things I like about 5e, is that it's up to the GM. The GM has the power to present it, power to change things to fit, not necessarily his world, but the player's world, and how to tell a better story. So in the hands of a good GM, an adventure path or a module, it can be a whole lot of fun. In the hands of a bad GM, you're just reading. By that same token, if it's a homebrew thing, if the GM is into his world, then it's super great. If you can get the players involved, you'll have a whole lot of fun with it. And in a homebrew setting, it's a lot easier to say the Red Dragon has paladin levels. What? You can't do that. Yes, I can. It is my world. But by that same notion, it's to answer if I'm really into an adventure path or homebrew, the answer depends entirely on the game master and the presentation. I think they both can be great, but I also think both of them can be really just that.
So which one do you prefer to run?
I have never run an adventure path. Well, that's a lie. I've a lot of times, if I need a dungeon on the spot, I'll go dive into an adventure path. I've used a lot of the dungeons from the Jade Regent adventure path, just flavoring them to fit the world. Because at the time I didn't think I was that good at dungeon crafting, because I won't say I was new, but I'm not where I'm sitting today. I like telling the stories. I like Paizo stories too. I also like I said, the game that's running on our channel right now is based off an N64 game. When we get done with that, assuming I still have a party, we'll jump over to Star Wars Saga Edition, and it's another N64 game. It's called Aiden Chronicles: The First Mage. It's really super obscure, but I really enjoyed it, and I like adapting the stories to a homebrew environment. By that same token, my players know I'm a real big fan of demi-planes, and a real big fan of you turn the corner and now you're here, and it's entirely different, and 2 months have passed, haha. I like doing that kind of thing. I like being able to make my own NPCs. I didn't start using voices until very, very recently. So I'm still kind of like feeling that out. And I still kind of like fall on my face sometimes. Like if I can't, like, how would this guy sound? I'm going to wing it. And it just, you know what I mean?
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, he's fake it till you make it. That's been my like motto doing this. But I like telling the story. I can run an AP. I would definitely run an AP if people were interested. That's actually it's in my Patreon rewards. If I get enough people to pledge at a certain level, I would get a party together. And if it dropped down to one person, I'll run a one-on-one. I think that'd be a whole lot of fun. If I had 10 people, I'd run for 10 people. It's whatever I can do. I like making my own story, but if I were to get into an AP, not only do I like the story of Galarion, but I know how to make it my own.
What is the most people you've run for?
9, and it was my first time GMing. I didn't know what I was doing at all. I'm 26 now. I'm 19 years old, and some guys I was playing Magic with, they were like, let's play D&D again. And they're all like 10 years older than me. So they all had like all the books and stuff, and we break it out. And I decided I'm going to try to GM for 9 people. And it's kind of like, I didn't know what I was doing. I went out to Walmart, I bought some poster board, bought a Sharpie, drew a double-ended map, and we ran with it. Is really, I guess I'm not going to say I was lucky that a lot of people weren't interested because they were just playing casually, but it's kind of a blessing that I had to start out GMing for 9 people with no experience. Up to that point, I had played a couple of real sessions of Pathfinder. This was 3.5. I didn't even own my own dice at the time. My entire tabletop experience had been like Neverwinter Nights 2, Temple of Elemental Evil, Baldur's Gate, essentially. And it's just kind of like, let's go. And like Joe says it best, I got in the car, I got behind the wheel of the car, we started driving, and I didn't crash. I actually, present day, I prefer the gigantic parties because you have more more people to bounce the narrative off of, more. I require all my players to give me a page backstory because then I can bounce off that backstory, and the more players equals the more backstories that I can mess around with, that makes the narrative bigger. The lowest I've ever GM for was 3. One of the people was in and out, so I'll say 2, but 2.5, I guess. And that can still be just as fun if the people are into it. But I definitely prefer the bigger parties. The bigger, the better, I say.
I've been averaging like 2 to 6 with the different games I've been running.
Mm-hmm.
Like I personally, I feel like 4 to 6 is like the sweet spot. Although I've had some fun games with 2 players.
Mm-hmm.
It really just depends on your players as well.
Yeah, for sure.
If you have players that come to play, then it's real easy.
Mm-hmm.
And when it's the 2 players, it's my Scarlet Sisterhood game, and those girls are all crazy. So they're like, writing material for them would be pointless for the most part. I just never know what they're gonna do. Are you kidding me? They finished one of their big arcs, which was having a bathhouse built. So
nice.
It was very important to them, but they got it now.
I understand.
And we had fun with it. It was getting ready to open, so I had them have some issues with the elemental plane of fire because they needed to hired a gnome that got a little crazy with the magics. The next thing you know, shenanigans.
Welcome to Pathfinder. Or whatever system you're. Welcome to tabletopping, I'll say.
Welcome to tabletopping. Yeah, exactly. Welcome to being a GM.
Mm-hmm.
So Fantasy Ground College has a question about using a monster. What about sea hags and aquatic adventures? See, to me, everything's a dungeon. It's just like, where is that dungeon? What does it look like?
Yeah, to me, I hate the idea. Like, if I feel like I'm in a dungeon, if I feel like my players are opening a door, here's an encounter, I get real like claustrophobic real quick. Aquatic adventures, at least in Pathfinder, they can turn deadly really fast unless the party is spec'd for it. Because all the weapons that aren't, I think it's piercing, all the weapons that aren't piercing are doing half damage underwater. The spellcasters are probably having a hard time casting if they're beneath the surface. I personally never used a sea hag, but I have used krakens a whole lot, and I really like krakens have an ability called jet, so I'll grab the party and then just jet like 300 feet under the water, and they're screwed. I would say for an aquatic adventure, like, I wouldn't necessarily tell the party like, hey, this is going to be an aquatic adventure, unless like you want to run the entire like 1 to 20 plus or however far you go. Like, if you're going to be at sea, they should probably know, because again, they can turn deadly like on a dime pretty much if everybody goes in the water.
Anytime they get on the boat, it can turn into an aquatic adventure.
Yeah, for sure. I had a player this was the last like in-person game I ran front to back, and we got to level like 24, 25. We did a bunch of weird epic XP stuff. And at the, I won't call it session 0. We weren't doing session 0s at the time, but he asked me if there was going to be aquatic stuff. And I'm like, yeah, sure. So he shows up session 1 with a pirate, and I have to figure out how to pull this off. Because at the time I was still kind of wet behind the ears, I guess. And this is when you start learning that, oh my God, this is really terrifying. Oh no. And then I had a player join later with he's playing this Celt who becomes really, really famous. Like we talk about Don Cott all the time in our, like he's one of those characters. I'm sure we all have him. And it's really lucky he was there because he had the strength score to like when their little boat flips over, when something attacks it, he's like flipping the boat in the water and pulling everybody back in. Again, the hags, I don't have a whole lot of like knowledge on sea hags because I've never, I'm in a party with a changeling at the moment. Well, he's a sylph, but he's calling himself a changeling because he wants to be male. Actually, I'm going to bring him up real quick. That's what I'll do. I'll jump on my phone here and we'll bring up sea hags.
So, you know, the sea hag part isn't really that relevant in my opinion. It's just like, that's going to be the person orchestrating the adventure. And the trick with, you know, aquatic adventures is either the players have to prep for it because of the environmental challenges, or they have to have some ability to do it, or something has to happen to them in order to make them able to survive the environment. And then it's, you know, really like, what do you want to do? Do you want to do a sunken city? Are you going to do underwater caverns and tunnels, or maybe even, you know, they're all made out of coral, that, you know, they have to explore a coral reef or something along those lines. Mm-hmm. It's about incorporating elements from that environment, one, you know, as hazards, and two, as, you know, as things that they're gonna have to overcome. You know, maybe like you had pointed out, you know, certain aspects of combat aren't going to work the same. How are your fire spells? How do they work underwater? Are you going to, you know, just rule that they're half strength? What about electricity spells? You know, are their ranges increased and their effect increased because, you know, the conductivity of water? Yeah, or you're going to zap yourself.
Now suddenly the whole party's dead because you shocking grasped underwater.
Yeah.
Oops. Yeah. I will say for encounters, and this is true also for encounters that will take place in the air, D6s or even like MTG spin down counters, the D20s that like the 20 will be here and you tick it over when it's 19, et cetera, et cetera. They become your best friend to determine like height or depth, because that can get really confusing, especially with newer players, if they don't know, well, how far down did I go? That kind of thing. I'll also say, and I'm not the biggest fan of, like, I'm real good at, if the rules feel like you're spending too much time flipping through a book, or if it's too like messing around with minutia, I guess, like kick them to the curb, but have a vague knowledge of how underwater combat works in terms of like, if your swim check fails by this, you go down XYZ feet. Off the top of my head, I don't know them, but I should probably look them up because, well, I don't have any aquatic stuff going on right now. But like, again, they can get really hairy fast, and it can, in an unperfect world, it can turn to all your players like going into their phones and like we're quickly reading how aquatic encounters work. So I would say a general, not mastery, because are we ever, but general knowledge of how the aquatic encounters work. And again, like if he goes 50 feet under, put the D6 on 5 and set it by his token, so like everybody can remember where he's at.
We actually had our last in-person session, we had different elevations, and I'm sure you're probably familiar with the pizza tables, right?
I work at a pizza joint, yeah.
I know, you told me before. So we would stack as many as them for like every 10 feet that the player had a difference of elevation. So,
and that is how you break a mini. I've had that happen. I used to use the dice towers. They're just gonna, boop, there goes his sword. Damn it.
Damn it. Well, fortunately, they have the plastic ones that hold up pretty well.
Yeah, that's true too.
So, and you know, and we get pizza every time we play. So, and Ted has an obsession with plastic, so he cannot throw away anything. So he has probably like hundreds of those things by now, and so he just busts them out. He got flying. Well, you put the character on the pizza table. So, but that worked out really well for us. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the whole thing is really just capturing the feel for the environment, the theme. That's really what you want to get.
Oh yeah, for sure. An underwater encounter should feel just as foreign as an encounter on another planet. Like, especially as far, like, as you go deeper down, we're talking about like coral ruins, and even like deeper than that, it should all feel very, very otherworldly, because it well and truly is down there. there's a lot of aquatic races in Path in any game. There's a lot of aquatic races that build cities, and they should all feel really like absolutely different, but still like have like the basic similarity of like a market, say, than whatever's going on topside. Like merfolk cities are a big thing, and merfolk and Pathfinder actually, as a player race, are really, really strong. You wouldn't think it, but they're real good. Or even something like the Aboleth, or if you want to break out, I'm a big fan of the Great Old Ones. And like Cthulhu has stats in Pathfinder, if you want to break out something like that for a story arc that can sell the more alien thing. But again, it's just like I'm saying, it should feel real different. At the same time, a coral reef can use the same basic environmental hazards-ish as like a forest does. Hills will still be hills. Just, you assume at some point, especially at higher levels, people will have their air bubbles, their like ways to function underwater. Freedom of movement kind of just makes it like you're flying. So I would say make it feel really different, but mechanically it's basically the same thing as far as the exploration goes.
Yeah, and you have to work in 3 dimensions. So
yeah, for sure.
The Inn of Planner Crossroads has a question.
Hi, Adam.
What is a creature that you have reskinned to look like one thing but is another thing mechanically?
A lot of times what I'll do is I used to be a real big Lord of the Rings fan. I guess I still am. I just haven't like had the 15 hours to like, let's go watch all of them. Yeah, that kind of thing. But I was a real big fan of the Oliphant. And I would put players against them. And this is yet another one of the like notches in Don Cott's belt. The Dire Elephant is strong, but it's not, it's like a CR like 8 or 9, something like that. So it's not hard for like somebody to run up and just, whoop, I died. Sorry, GM. Your cool encounter's dead. Nah, that kind of thing. So what I'll do is I'll take like a CR 15, 16 encounter. I don't remember exactly what I used. I think it was like a really big, it was like a CR 16 spider. And that became the stats for what was an Oliphant. And I put a bunch of dudes with lances. I'm a big fan of Spirited Charge because it's real scary. Like hanging from the sides of them, and archers are up here. And the players will see what is essentially just a giant elephant with really like curled tusks and stuff. But mechanically, it's just I think it was a Lang spider. I don't quite remember. I was just kind of like CR16, big, go. Yeah. By that same token, I'm real good at like if I need something, I won't necessarily like cling to the bestiaries, like hold on for dear life. I'll just kind of build it. Like as the GM, you have the ability to, I won't say cheat, but like if you need that thing to have a D12 hit dice, but it's something that should have a D6, you have that power. And if you like, the narrative becomes the most important thing. So if you need something to be really powerful and you need it to have 25 hit dice, plug stuff in and go. I'm also a big fan of, I think, the power disparity, especially like because power gaming is really powerful, like we talked about. As you get to the higher CR, the stuff in the bestiary, it becomes kind of less powerful. It becomes like the players will get here and there, here are. So I'm a big fan of like, if something won't keep up, I'll slap class levels on it to make the line do this. Essentially, like we were talking about Eldritch Horror stuff, I had to put a bunch of, they really like leadership in that group, I'll say. A bunch of characters, and the last boss was Cthulhu, and there were a bunch of like little like dumb monsters on the side that could stun lock people, but I had to put like 20 anti-paladin levels on Cthulhu to make him relevant. So as far as reskinning, I'm a big fan mechanically of class levels, or again, just kind of like, here's the picture, go. Actually, a long time ago in that 3.5 game, I did make Silent Hill's Pyramid Head to run around what was essentially their Silent Hill. And I think it was just like an iron golem with like throw the hit points through the roof and give it a giant greatsword. I mean, that is what theater of the mind is. Essentially, if you tell the players it is this, unless they're like peeking behind your screen, they're not going to know either.
That's so true. I want to say, like, I do this stuff all the time, and I will just describe a monster that doesn't, that may not exist, and just pull the stats from something else. But one of the ones that jumps into my mind is when what I kind of did an adventure as a little bit of a tribute to David Bowie when he passed away, and so I had the Goblin King make an appearance, and one of the players couldn't make it for the session, so he had captured that player, and if the rest of the group didn't save him, he was going to be turned into one of the goblins in the city. So when they actually encounter him at the end and had the battle with him, I just used the Chain Devil stats for the Goblin King, and instead of chains, he was attacking with silks that were all
Okay.
around the chamber. So yeah, so it worked, and like I am like personally dead set against creating new monsters for the most part. I will mash two monsters together. I will reskin a monster. I have to exhaust a lot of things before I go to creating a monster.
Mhm.
Especially like, but we used to do that all the time in 3.5 though. You know, you might spend an hour just building a new monster with templates, you know, stacking template after template and class levels. And yeah, at this point, I really just don't do that in my game that much.
Yeah, it can take a whole lot of time, and it takes time away from actually building the story. Personally, I love like, okay, it's time for a new character sheet. Here we go. But also like Wizards is really good at doing exactly that. My 5e knowledge isn't what it could be, but my favorite 5th edition books are the Plane Shift series that Wizards of the Coast put out for Magic the Gathering. From Battle for Zendikar forward, there are stats for all of those. It may be in Greek. I don't know how many people play Magic here, but like if you want your players to fight Emrakul or Ulamog or any of the dinosaurs from Ixalan, they have stats, but they're just like, I think Ulamog is a Tarask. I think the dinosaurs have actual character sheets, but like all the Eldrazi Titans are just like, here's a Tarask, here is a Baelor, but they look like this, that kind of thing. And that's part of the story. Just go with it, you know?
Yeah, no, they had like the whole Guardian statue section where it's like, use this, or this. And any statue encounter in Ixalan could possibly be one of those. It might be active, it might not. I actually just used one of the Titan dinosaurs in the back, you know, in one of my games, and I kind of reskinned it a little bit, just more so about, you know, of how it looked. But I know like one of my players, like Ted, because we did the excellent thing together, he definitely knew what it was, but it was the giant Spinosaurus dinosaur that has lightning shooting off of it. And it like completely wiped out one of our cities.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So I was like, which is going to be interesting since we have a shared game and a shared world. You know, so the other DM is in there as the player, and I'm like, they decided to do one thing instead of another. So the monster didn't get stopped. And then just like one of the cities that's made a bunch of appearances in my games is just no more. And now it's just a wasteland full of monsters.
And that is like the hardest thing I've ever done, is share a world with somebody. Maybe it's just because like the GMs were kind of bad, I guess. But like when I first started, we had one world and 4 GMs, and I GM'd 90% of it, and then I'd get a one shot essentially. But in that one shot, the other GMs would make sure, and I think they were doing this for their characters, but they'd make sure we got all the broken homebrew loot. Like, hey, you want a +20 to your armor class? You find it. So do you, Tommy. I'm just, damn it. But I mean, if you can pull it off and you like have friends that you can do that with, I think that makes the storytelling even better, because you have like, it's literally, you become a dual core processor.
And we start kind of messing with each other too. Like one DM will do something, the other DM undoes it. But like we do it, like it all happens in game though when that stuff happens. So it's kind of funny. You know, one person will create a thing, the other person will burn it down. So, but we're pretty easygoing, so it makes it easy.
Fair enough.
Fantasy Grounds College, obligatory, aggressively helpful Fantasy Grounds question. Have you given Pathfinder for Fantasy Grounds a try? Or wait a minute, what is it? Given PFRG a try in Fantasy Grounds yet?
I have not, to tell you the truth. My experience on the online world is still very fresh. I've been like Dave said, I've been a YouTube channel for like 6 months, and all of that was kind of like, I started off in a 5e game. I played a Dawnforged Alchemist from 1 to 5, and I kind of just shanghaied those players, and we started messing around on Roll20, and I'm just kind of pressing buttons trying to figure out how it goes. I know one of my players does use Fantasy Grounds quite a lot, and he likes it. And I wouldn't be opposed to trying it if like all of my players are just kind of, okay, Fantasy Grounds. And okay, yeah, sure, that's where the party's going, figuratively and literally. But
if you're on Discord, they have a Discord channel where they're very helpful over there.
Oh, sweet. Yeah, we definitely, all of my gaming that I do on Black Dragon Gaming is just Discord and Roll20 and OBS essentially, and we just run with it. Roll20 is, I like Roll20's, that same player who likes Fantasy Grounds also bought me a year's subscription of Pro, so I have dynamic lighting. I don't know like what Fantasy Grounds has that Roll20 doesn't, because again, I'm still super green at online stuff. But I'd be interested to read more. I'd be interested to try it. And again, if my players go there, yeah, we'll do it.
So Colin has a question. He wants to know what are our favorite influences that are not tabletop related in gaming.
I think I know that, Colin. So I'm going to throw it out on a loop and just, hi, Colin. I could be dead wrong. But Lucina, yep. That's my my psychic sorcerer who failed a will save at the last session of my not live stream, but the last session of my stream. So it will be a fun Thursday. No, my favorite influences that aren't strictly tabletop. Well, for the longest time, all of my characters were named after some kind of legendary creature from Magic, because that's kind of what I did first. It's going to sound kind of dorky, but real life can be really scary, both in terms of like life experiences and like what goes on in the wild outside. There was a point in time where I needed to understand how a forest worked. This was years and years and years ago. So I went to a park. I just kind of walked around the forest, and I didn't really understand difficult terrain in a forest until I actually like get in there and I'm tripping over roots and stuff. In terms of like actual game stuff, excuse me, real big fan of like RPGs in general. I remember being like 10 years old, going through the like $5 bin at computer games at Walmart and just, here is Temple of Elemental Evil. I will try it. I still play it today. But a big fan of like I said, my game I'm playing that goes live on Sundays is based off an N64 game. And you can pull a lot of that kind of stuff together to just kind of make a tabletop world. I don't read as much as I used to, because I mean, I don't have time with this and with work and with living life, but I used to be a big fan of, I guess I still am, of a book series called The Wheel of Time. My players might know that the Aiel are running around with them. They might have no idea. I have no idea what everybody's into, but they're there. And I'm real good at like, if I need an NPC to not necessarily be memorable, because I guess I'm kind of indulging my nostalgia, but like these guys were really cool. Now they're human rogues and they're with the party. Haha, that kind of thing. Even just like, I'm a pretty big history buff too. I'm still kind of trying to figure out who Alexander the Great is in Pathfinder, because like Galarion has like a region that is essentially ancient Egypt, and here's like fascist Germany, and here's the Viking town. I'm trying to find him, but I'm a big fan also of the Total War series. I haven't played a whole lot of Warhammer, but a lot of like the setting set in like classical Greece and ancient Rome, or like feudal Japan, that kind of thing. And you just kind of like rewrite those stories, reskin them. We've been telling them for years. Why not convert it to fantasy stuff?
Yeah, for me, I'm pretty sure there's about a couple of hundred novels that I've read, so I steal from all of them. At this point, I'm stealing from things that I probably don't even remember I read. It just it's in the subconscious somewheres. And I love comics and TV shows and all that stuff. Everything is fair game. One of the fun things for me was running a supers game and running them in basically in our world. Was it connected to DC or Marvel or any of the other properties? For me, the biggest fun was taking things from pop culture, even if they're things I'm not really into but aware of, and then inserting them into the game. Like, and this is going back, before Nerdarchy formed, so over 4 years. And like I wanted to do Michael Jackson as a zombie lord. I never got around to. And this was before Trump ran for president or anything. This is not political, guys. I was going to have Trump in the game, and I was going to have his hair be a symbiote. Some kind of alien or something. I re-envisioned like an Incredible Hulk type character off of Mr. T, who I really liked as a kid, and I think later on he got sick or something, because he got really skinny and small in comparison to what he had been. So I kind of like worked it into like the game that like he got some kind of treatment, and so he became this like Incredible Hulk type character.
Nice.
That and it kind of like came out at like an exhibition wrestling match or something that he was involved with. I made a villain called Monster Truck. Nice. It's literally a sentient monster truck. So for me, like the superhero game was the most fun because I could take things like that. I did a King Kong scenario
Nice.
with Bubbles, the chimpanzee from Michael Jackson. And it's like it wasn't just like beat the giant monkey and save the girl. It was save the girl, and they had to, and then like they realized, oh, it's a game to him. His favorite movie is King Kong, and he's reenacting the movie. So now you have to, now they have to figure out, well, how do they calm the giant chimpanzee down, have the girl not get hurt, have no one get hurt, and not, and have Bubbles not get hurt. So, and then every once in a while, it would just be a thing that would happen. Like something was done to him, so he freakishly grows, to this giant ape occasionally. And so that this scenario would unfold, and they would have to calm him down.
Nice. I love like superhero games like that. For a long time, we were playing like the really old Marvel, which is just grab your percentage dice and go. It's completely just super stupid easy. Anybody can play it. There's no crunch. And like all those games were full improv with the GM, just kind of like, here's the chart, go. And we definitely talked about playing a D20 Modern, and we all play like some kind of summoner where we conjure up celebrities and have them do our bidding for hilarity. And also we talked about, we never did it. We came really close to doing it, but we were going to play a Pathfinder game. We were going to call it King of the Underhill, where we all played halflings and we all played somebody from King of the Hill. Have somebody play a cavalier riding, can't think of her name, riding Ladybird, have somebody playing Khan. I was going to try to weasel in a Ed, and Eddie character and play Johnny 2x4, because Pathfinder literally has an archetype called Urban Ranger.
Yeah.
So go that route. I actually had a player, he dropped after a couple sessions because that's life, I guess. But he was playing, he called the character Randall Savage, but his Randy Savage is totally Randy Savage. The Pathfinders who are watching will know the power of the synthesist summoner, and he's playing that, and he's flavoring all his attacks as like elbow drops off here and like grabbing somebody and that kind of thing. And it's like a lot of times the players will like in the wrong setting that can be like, well, what are you doing? This is stupid. We are here for serious Pathfinder. But a lot of other times when that comes up, and like especially when it's unexpected, just suddenly here's this guy. What? And everybody just falls out laughing, and makes for a great time.
When you mentioned the celebrities, that made me think of one of the more recent novels, a series I've read, X Heroes by Peter Klein, which is basically zombie apocalypse, but just before the zombie apocalypse breaks out, superheroes start showing up. And one of the games, like the survivors play, is killing celebrity zombies. So they get points for it, and they're like always arguing whether you're not. Nice. How many points it was worth.
Mm-hmm.
So, so anytime you can steal from any kind of media, it's great. And it also becomes like these little Easter eggs that get stuffed into your games. Like we had one GM run, basically he was inspired by the TV show When Nature Attacks, or When Wild Attacks. It was a Wild Attacks or something. I forget what it was, but you'd always see them selling the DVDs, or the VH, might even be VHS when that was out. There's my brother did Little Shop of Horrors.
Nice.
He also did the Cringe That Stole Father's Winter's Day. Yeah, so I totally did for my Spelljammer game. I totally took the scene from Star Wars when they land in the giant space worm, and
nice.
It turned that into an adventure. So the dungeon was the space worm. So anytime you can take that stuff, and if you can slip it in, and your players don't realize it right away, but eventually like they have that epiphany, you're like, oh, you're using this. I feel like for the most part they like that. They like that they get to like solve the thing that's going on in addition to playing the game. I know some GMs are like, they're afraid that they're going to get accused of ripping something off or stealing this or stealing that. But I find in my games that the opposite happens with the players. They're excited that you did that. And when they don't realize it initially, and it takes them a little while for it to kind of like kick in, they like it even more.
Yeah, for sure. I think the same is true for like characters that players make. Like sometimes you feel like you're ripping them off, but like for me, if I GM for a character, or if I'm in a party with a character, or if I turn over someone's stream and someone has a character and it resonates with me, I'm stealing that character and I'm going to put it in games. And eventually, like, somebody will see it and somebody will see, hey, that's my rogue. And sometimes I've never had anybody get like pissed off about it, but I've had people like, it's always that fun review, like, hey, it's that guy, or hey, it's that NPC. Like I said earlier, my wife is a big Fallout fan, and there was a point in time where we had to stop like a sudden monster outbreak, and she described them as kind of like dinosaurs, kind of like dragons. And it took, I don't know why it took the whole session for me and Joe to be like, those are death claws. We are fighting death claws. But yeah, it was totally, that's what that was.
And like, to me, that's the best, when it's like, oh, when it takes you a while to go, oh, and you have that sudden epiphany.
Oh yeah. By that same token, it can go real bad too. Like I had a game where like me and we're all playing like these real big optimized characters, and it's sold that we have to go fight like the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, and then we turn the corner and it becomes like Donkey Kong, like we have to jump over barrels, and it's fun. I enjoyed it. I'm not trying to like disparage the GM who may or may not watch it. Like suddenly we're playing Battleship when I want to play Shoot the 4 Horsemen. But a lot of times, like if you're going in, if the paladins we were are going into battle, like here we go. Why are we playing Mario? Jump over a barrel. It was actually a Kirby, I think he was throwing at us, that kind of thing. But it's like, it's all in good fun. And after the fact, you realize, hey, that was that. And it was super cool. I actually had we had a puzzle we had to solve at one point that was the Konami code. No, now I don't remember it. I remembered it at the time when I started hearing like up, downs, and Bs. I'm like, that is the Konami code. But it could be fun. Yeah, like you're saying.
So Dristan Ross, the 8th, an Attack of the Killer Tomato adventure is way overdue.
Oh my God.
Could be fun. Could be fun.
I remember I'm like 14 years old staying at a friend's house for the weekend, and he got Return of the Killer Tomatoes on DVD, and he left it on all night. And I wake up just every 5 minutes, I'm like rolling over, waking up, just Return of the Killer Tomatoes, and just shut it off. But yeah, it totally can. Oh yeah. Pathfinder has stats for these little guys that I'm just now becoming familiar with, and one of them is a race as of Ultimate Wilderness that a player can play called Leshies, which are essentially just a druid takes like a pumpkin and like jack-o'-lanterns it, and then now it's familiar. But yeah, just make a little like mechanically, and here we are back to that, like mechanically some kind of little leshy, but it's just kind of like bouncing tomato kills everybody.
Yeah, have the rogue get big. Well, yeah. we're up on the hour mark. Like I said, it'll go by fast.
Yeah, it always does.
I want to thank you for hanging out with me today, Tommy. Go check out Black Dragon Gaming, not gaming.
Yeah.
You know, take a look at that Black Dragon Games. Look at Black Dragon Gaming.
Black Dragon Gaming.
Thanks for hanging out with me. I want to thank everyone in the chat for hanging out today. And it was our big 200th episode of the live chat. So that was really cool. And with that, guys, stay nerdy. Things are falling.
Always. Yep. I have cats.